When did you get home?
I got home October 10/5. Let's see, 3/10/41, 10/5.
Would have been 45.
1945.
Right.
October of 45.
So who greeted you at the bus when you got to Sherburne?
Ernie.
That was it?
Yeah.
Nobody else was there?
Are you kidding me?
Not Grandma Sophie?
They were
And
all on the
Sherburne?
porch, yeah.
Yeah, they were on
Oh,
the
they were
porch,
all on
and
the
Dee
porch
was
with-
screaming.
Oh, they were.
They knew the minute.
You knew where
Where's the bus
Yeah.
come in?
you know where that store is?
Skip.
Skip's store.
That's
Yeah.
where he
That's
got
where
off.
that's where the bus stopped.
And they saw his boots come down off that bus. Grandma and I were on our porch. And Aunt Dee started screaming. And Grandma Sophie, Aunt Dee just went wild.
Yeah.
And he walks across, and Florence and Rose weren't there because
No.
one of Molly's kids was having Holy Communion or some big affair. And they were pretty sure your dad was going to be on that bus, but she had to attend this affair. But I think your sister Rose was there. But no, I don't remember.
She was on the bus.
I know Lucy was there.
Florence and
and-
Rose was on the bus.
Okay, they had gone to Binghamton.
Correct.
Yeah. And it was a joyful time for them.
Yeah.
That was my first look at your father after 4 years.
How did he look?
Well, he didn't look very good in uniform.
No, why?
Gee, after
Why?
4.5 years, I thought I looked pretty good. in the
Yeah,
uniform.
right. Why
Well,
didn't he
yeah, I
look?
don't know. I really don't know.
He must have lost a little weight over there.
No.
That's
You
what I
like
put
it?
it
He
on.
was 116 pounds, I think, when he went into service. You can picture that.
116.
And then Grandma lived upstairs then in the house. And he went upstairs and he said to, must have been Ernie or somebody, I don't know, I need some liquor. I need
Oh,
a drink.
I said I needed a drink.
Yeah, and they didn't have any, so they came
Yeah.
down to our house.
Yeah.
And Grandpa had liquor, so somebody took the bottle upstairs, and then they said, why don't you guys, to Grandma and I, why don't you come up and see Carlo? And of course, Grandma and I waited till, 2 or 3 hours, I guess, be sure the family was able to be with him first. And we went out and greeted him, and he took one look at me, and he pushed me aside. Oh, my God,
I didn't
have
push
you changed? That
I
was 4
did-
years
I-
difference. Well,
yeah, right.
I was 16 when he went into the service.
Yeah, I didn't dare touch her.
Yeah, really.
And,
Grandpa Mody would have
that's
killed
just
you.
what oh, my God, have you changed? That was it.
That was it.
Well, not quite. I was dating, what's his name then, but it was kind of the start of it.
Yeah. Who were you dating at the time?
What was his first name? Benton.
Winton.
Can't even remember.
His last name was Winton.
Yeah, Benton Winton. And I dated him for a while. Not for very long. He wasn't my type.
Yeah, I think we sort of went through, your whole dating thing the last tape. So basically, you guys wind up getting married. You wind up in Bath. So let's start from there. You had gotten a job through Uncle George, right?
Oh, I didn't get it through him. He's the one that had me. He says they had vacancies at the VA Center Bath.
Yeah.
And so he says, why don't you come over? So when he was gone, I went over with him and went to the personnel office. They didn't like the idea because they wanted to get the Bath boys on. Doris Fisk was in there. She was Doris Clark at the time. She didn't like the idea that the outsiders were coming in.
Yeah, right.
And had to take the test, took the test, and passed it, and that's why we're still here.
Yeah, right. So where was that first house again that you guys bought?
The one that we moved when we got married, you mean the
Yeah,
apartment?
you guys got married,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then where did you move to?
Well, we
On
had
Howell Street.
that room on Howell
Yeah, we
Street,
had one room on Howell Street
next to
for
the
a week,
cemetery.
Uh-huh,
before Dad could get us an apartment.
I see.
And then we lived on East Forest Street in an apartment upstairs. Mildred and Wendell Miller lived downstairs. Actually, she helped Dad get the apartment.
Yeah.
We got back from our honeymoon and went to the house where Dad used to stay, which was Wendell's
Gorgeous.
grandmother, and Mildred
see.
was there. And Dad mentioned to her that we needed an apartment. He couldn't find one, and she says, well, where we live, there's an empty one. So she told us where it was, so we went right over, and Elwyn Gay owned it, and they said, well, we've promised it to somebody. If they're not here by, 7
7.
o'clock, you can have it.
Yeah.
And the people didn't come. So we lived there until...
What was the address there?
that was 16, I think, wasn't it?
East
I
Warren?
thought it was
Small
36.
Street.
I thought it was 36.
I don't remember.
16 would have been, the Sutricks were 18, so
20.
16 would have been 2 doors down from our
Yeah.
house.
Okay. No, it's right where
It was
the
36, isn't it?
school, it was right where the school, right next to,
Where the
there was a
school was
house
around.
between
Yeah.
Wilson's and us. The Hobbs lived in the house, and then, it was,
Wilson's, Hobbs, and Gay.
And then the church,
yeah, so,
right?
Yeah.
In the Catholic Church.
yeah. Actually, we live where the school is now. And
Right.
you're right, it probably was a 30-something.
Yeah.
I think the rectory's 32. And we lived there, probably, 14, 16 months?
Until before Al was born.
Yeah.
Al was born
I was
on-
pregnant with Al when we moved.
Yeah.
And to...
So that's where Carol was born after.
Yeah,
Carol was
Carol
born
was born
on
there. We lived there.
36 East.
And Al was born on 143 East Washington?
No.
No, 134?
He was, that's next to the Baptist
Oh,
church.
no, that's right. We moved back to Howell Street. We rented there. And what, no, that might have been 16 Howell.
I don't remember.
I don't remember. And
All I
Al
know
was
was
born
That's
there.
about right. 'Cause
We
Rose
rented.
and I were actually over there today. I was trying to figure out which
Yeah.
house it was.
It was
It's-
next to the Baptist, next to
It's
the
a
church.
chocolate brown house.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the, they painted it one time while we were there, and it's been chocolate brown ever since.
Yeah.
And we lived downstairs, and Marion and John Yeager lived upstairs for a while, and then the other Eatons moved in.
And John Yeager's tanked me every day because we heated his apartment.
Right.
All our heat was going up.
And then, before, Al was born there.
Al
Yeah.
was born
Yeah, and then we bought a house on 134
there.
East
No, 143.
43.
143.
Okay, East Washington Street, and we lived there, 5 years?
To,
I was pregnant with
May-
you
May
when
of
we
50.
moved
Yeah.
from there, and then moved to 20, East Moore Street.
So, why don't we go back to, Carol's pregnancy? What was it like for you to be pregnant for the first time?
I was never sick. I never had morning sickness.
None of that.
To me, it was wonderful, and I had a very difficult delivery, but that was it.
What were the delivery problems?
First child, I guess, for one
There
thing.
was no
I don't think there was
cooperation.
no problem, but I labored from, we walked to the hospital from East Moore Street to East of Ben Street to the hospital. We had no car. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. We woke Mildred Miller up, and she made coffee, and she said, you better get 2 o'clock in the morning, she made coffee, and she says, you better get to the hospital. They didn't have a car. We didn't have a car. Probably didn't have money for a cab if we even knew there was a cab
There
in
wasn't
there.
any cabs.
And we walked, and I remember having a pain in the middle of the road,
Yeah.
It wasn't
As
that
you're-
far.
as
We
you're
got to
walking
the
up there.
hospital, and Carol wasn't born till the next afternoon at
3:45.
3:45. Yes, I labored all that time. And then
And the nurses weren't helping the way they should have. One there was, that was that doctor's name was, she was the girlfriend.
to Dr. Kenzie.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what her name was.
And she
And
just
she was
says,
a
oh, you
what?
got lots of time, and that's all she did.
So they would just come and go. Now, were you
And
in
then
the
all of a sudden, she started to deliver, and they held her knees together
Oh,
to
they
get
did?
her up into the delivery room.
So they had to get Dr. Smith there.
Yeah.
At that time, your doctor had to be there, But Dad was with me all the time, and then he left the hospital, and he stayed quite a while, because by the time he went back to the apartment, the landlords, the Kennedys then were our landlords, because a gate fell to them.
Right.
And she asked Dad what happened, and he told her, and she said he looked like he was drunk. His hat was on backwards or sideways. She said he looked a mess. He was exhausted. I guess he went through the labor too.
Now,
She
you
said
weren't-
she never forgot that.
That's funny. Dad, you weren't in the labor room, were
Oh,
you?
no.
No,
You
they didn't
didn't-
allow
They
you
wouldn't.
to.
You
They
didn't
didn't
witness
allow
the
it
birth?
at that time.
No.
So it
And
was
Dad
Dr.
was never with me in any five, all
Oh,
five
no,
of
not
them.
at all?
We
Who was in
weren't
there
allowed
with you?
then.
At that time, no.
They-
Who was in there with you? Just the nurses?
Just the nurses. And, and then, of course, the doctor when he got there.
And who delivered Carol? Dr. Smith?
Dr. Smith delivered all of you, all five
he
of
did?
you.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And then Al was born 14 months after
Yeah.
that.
So how long were you in the hospital?
With
With
Carol, I
Carol?
was there 5 days. They
Oh,
kept
you were?
you then.
Yeah, right.
And I think I was there 3 days with Al and Carlo. I think it was Michael that Dr. Smith said to me, because I went home in 2 days. He said, next time I'm going to just shoo you home right out of the delivery room. But when I had you, I wanted to stay longer because I was exhausted, and I knew I was going home to 5 kids, and I think he kept me 5 days then.
Yeah.
Then in between there, of course, I had a miscarriage.
Yeah, right.
Between Carlo and Michael.
Right.
And then I had a miscarriage after you.
Right. So what was that first year like with Carol? What do you remember from that?
All I remember was that it wasn't bad the first 6 weeks because you kind of expected it, but then Carol at what age didn't want to sleep at night. And one night Dad got up and he took her out of the crib and he put her in her chair and he says, you're not playing. She wanted to play. But she must have been, what, maybe 4 months old or something? She was able to sit up in the chair.
Sit up, so
yeah. And that, she seemed to settle down after that.
Oh.
And I can't remember that any of you were problems after 6 weeks. You were. I had a hard time keeping you, but I blamed it on because the minute you would cry, I would pick you up because I was afraid I was going to neglect you because I had 5 children and I didn't have the time for you. And I used to go in, rub your back, and if you didn't fall asleep, I took you out in the living room and rocked you.
No.
And it was my fault. And I can remember I became pregnant, and at that time Dr. Smith had passed away, and I was going to Dr. Glenn.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he said, I will give him something to help him sleep, and I wouldn't have it. I said, no way, I'll put up with it. But he said, you're pregnant and you need rest. I said, no, I can manage.
Yeah.
And I think you were almost 3 years old before you slept the night through. I spoiled you.
Well, I got paid back with Nick and Kyle. Kyle was 9 months.
Right.
So
it was payback time.
what went around came around.
Right.
Gets right down
But
to
you
it.
wouldn't talk. We thought you would never talk.
Well, still
And
like that.
and the doctor just said, well, what do you usually do? He just looks and points, and it's given to him. He said, then why should he have to talk?
Well, plus trying to compete with Carlo and Al simultaneously, I was never going to win.
Hey, don't knock it. They were at the dinner table there, and they were handing you everything you wanted.
Well, that's good. So let's go back to Carol. So
Carol was a sweet little girl. She had the
Yeah.
prettiest little face as a baby. I just used to dress her up and couldn't wait for Dad to come home to see her because she was just like a little doll. At least she was to me
To us.
and to Dad
Both of
too.
us.
She just was like a little doll, and she still has that beautiful face.
yeah, yeah. How can you not be? So then Al's what, 14 months?
Al was a hungry baby. We had a real tough time with Al keeping formula down him because
Well,
he
that
would
was
throw
it.
it up because he needed so much because he was so big. And Dr. Smith, I remember, said to me, "You can give him a little bit of cereal after 2 or 3 weeks because when we give him formula, he'd just bring it right up because he required so much." And but he was a good baby. I can't remember
No.
that he was.
As long as he was fed, he was fed. That's all.
As long as he was fed, he was fine.
Within
And
a month, he was eating 3 meals a day.
He used to cry
And
so hard.
he wasn't fat.
Yeah, he grew.
He was just big.
Yeah, like Kyle.
And I remember one time you were in church and I was changing his diaper and he was so natty. And at that time we had bassinets, and they had the canvas thing. He dug his feet in the canvas and fell right over backwards. He just went right down. Petrified. I was petrified. He just got away from me. He was so strong.
I was coming down that street there, Buell Street.
Yeah, Beale Street goes in
halfway down that there, I could hear him screaming already.
Oh, really?
Yeah, church was only on Sunday at the time.
Yeah.
But it was a warm day, and so and the windows were open. He had leather lungs. He should have been a Marine.
So what was Carol's reaction to having him? She was probably too young to really understand.
I think she was too young. The only ones that I can remember, you kids, not you, you were in the bassinet, that the 4 of them would line up and watch you when you would cry or I had to change your diaper and things like that. I don't remember any other times the other kids were actually fascinated by having a baby at home. I can't remember, but I do remember that they still...
Well, when we brought Michael home, I remember the babe sitting there, or standing there, looking at him, and after a while he just figured that Michael wasn't doing anything. What's the sense of me standing here? So.
See, we couldn't bring Michael home from the hospital. We had to farm him out for 10 days.
What was the matter with him?
Because Carol and Al had chickenpox.
No.
Dr. Smith said that Carlo was most likely to come down with it, and it would be bad if Michael got it. So there was a night nurse, Mrs. Johnson, that said to us when she knew us, when I was still in the hospital, she says, "I will take him," and she just lived a few doors away from us. And we knew he'd have excellent care. And I used to go over every day and bathe him and change him and make his formula. But she kept him 10 days. We had to pay her.
Do you remember where that Emerson store was on a corner there?
No.
The little grocery store across from... well, he didn't live there.
No,
Tom
that's
was
right.
But that
Tom
would have
was
been on
born
what,
there.
Howell somewhere?
But right on where Peterson's lived. Do you remember where...
Right across the street from Peterson.
You remember where Ed Foster lived? Mike Foster lived?
Sorta.
Yeah, okay, right across from there on East Washington Street.
Oh, yeah.
The brick house. And the
there was a
nurse
store
lived right
there?
across the
She lived
street.
across the street. So all we had to do was walk down there.
Yeah.
And I used to go and feed him and that, and then
And
she
cry.
kept him for 10 days, and I did his diapers. I used to take his diapers. And she kept him for 10 days because Dr. Smith said he shouldn't come home. And then I can't remember that Carlo ever came down with him.
I don't think he did.
I don't think he did. But he was in that incubation period,
Yeah.
and he said it would be very tough on.
How'd you feel about Mike being there?
It was very sad.
Well,
It was a very, very
very
sad
upsetting.
time. Very upsetting. Here you had a new baby and you couldn't bring him home.
Yeah.
But Grandma came and helped me out so she could stay with the rest of the kids while I'd go over there. She
I
stayed.
figured it was our kid, and here we are farming him out to somebody else. So I
Yeah.
figured it was our responsibility. Why did we have to do it?
Know the feeling well?
And as it turned out, Michael happened to be the sickest of all you kids.
Right.
We almost lost him at 13 months with seizures, pneumonia.
Double-
Dr. Smith said if it
yeah,
wasn't for
double
the new
pneumonia.
drug, he would have died. If I didn't get up and look at him, Mike would have died from seizures.
Yeah.
He had had a cold,
Yeah.
and I put him to bed, and Dad said, give him aspirin. It's a wonder we didn't kill you kids giving you aspirin. And we gave him aspirin, and he went to sleep, and then we went to bed, and he woke up, and I got up, and I can't remember
Well, he
if I
was-
gave him a bottle
he
or
was
what.
breathing not normal.
Yeah.
But I just figured that he was just filled up, and that's what it was. And so that's when your mother decided to put on the light.
Yeah.
She put on the light, and she says, his eyes are wide open. I still hear her say that. Carlo, his eyes are wide open. That's when I jumped out of bed.
Yeah.
And he was stiffer than a board. I mean, he had this seizure. And so,
You picked him up, and you said,
Right.
call Dr. Smith. It
Right.
was 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and
Yeah.
I said, Dr.
Yeah.
Smith, my baby's dying.
Yeah.
And I said, hurry. He said, I've got to get my clothes on. And he came,
always
and
had a
I was,
dress.
I was screaming.
Yeah. I remember.
And I was pulling my hair because Dad wouldn't let me go upstairs.
Yeah.
He and Mike were upstairs. He
figured
wouldn't let me go upstairs.
he was gray. His
And all
lips were
he-
blue.
Dr. Smith put some shot in him, and it was a new drug. Well, no, the
No.
new drug was in the hospital, and when they
He-
put him in the oxygen tent. And I couldn't go to the hospital. I had no one to stay with the kids. Here it is,
Yeah. Right.
2, 3 o'clock in the morning. He just told Dad, wrap him in a blanket. And he asked Dad the first thing, has he been baptized? Because they didn't think he was going to make it.
Hmm.
And they immediately put him in the oxygen tent.
They had him there, and they had the bunting
We had a
on,
bunting on him.
and he was all full of sweat.
Oh,
And
really?
they were having trouble the nurses were having trouble trying to unzip the zipper. So I just yanked it right out of him.
Yeah.
And they were very startled. They just looked at him. And,
Well, Dr.
I
Smith
used to-
had given him a shot at home.
oh yeah, he put it right in the
Prior,
shoulder.
yeah.
And he didn't wait. He just yanked it open and put it in his shoulder. And we got him down to the hospital. And
Dr. Smith took him to the hospital.
Yep.
We had no car.
Oh, yeah.
And the drug was aloe vera.
Uh-huh.
And what they did is they put him in the crib, but they had the plastic cover over him.
Well, it was an
And,
oxygen tent, actually.
Well, whatever, I don't care what it was. All I know was plastic, and that as the air was going in there, this aloe vera was going in there and opened up the phlegm
Yeah.
so that the oxygen could get into his lungs. Otherwise,
So he was having trouble breathing, basically.
Oh,
what
yeah.
did, what
He
did
was
they
having
figure
trouble
out
when
caused that?
when I
double
when,
pneumonia.
when
Oh,
I
he
heard
just
him
had
breathing.
Pneumonia in both lungs.
Yeah, that's one. He was in bad shape, and then he had several after that. But
Well,
we were
well, that was-
none of them like that one.
That was his heat.
Seizures.
No, well, the heat terminals
Yeah.
had not developed,
Yeah.
and so any little thing, minute his temperature went up, and he'd have a seizure.
Yeah, I remember one of those when the Mifflins came over and stuff.
Yeah. Well, he was a little older then. He was 6 then,
Yeah.
but prior to that, Michael had had several when he was younger. One time,
Yeah.
I picked him up from his nap, and he went into one in my arms. And Dad called Dr. Woodward, and he said, put him in tepid, and we called Dr. Smith.
Yeah.
But Dr. Woodward came over, and Dr. Smith both came, and they said he's going to be all right. Put him in tepid water. We took Michael to a specialist in Elmira, Dr. Murphy, and he stripped him completely and measured his head and did a whole bunch of stuff. And he said he agreed with Dr. Smith it was the heat terminal. But he also said he would put him on, what was it, barbiturate, if we wanted to keep him quiet and be sure he'd never have him. We said, no way.
Yeah.
We're not putting him on a drug. We'll just, as long as we know what it is. And then whenever we called Dr. Smith, he said, you know what to do. I don't need to come. You know how to take care of him. And we did. We used to put him in the
well,
in
the thing
tub.
that irritated me was that when we told him that, he says, well, you know what to do, you can do it. But he had told us, previous to that, whenever he had a seizure, call me no matter what time of day. And so he had it, so I called him.
Yeah.
Well, he
So
used to
so
come,
that-
and then it got to be
I don't
so
care
often.
about that. That's when he should have told us
Yeah.
that, well, you know how to do it, so the next time anything happens, that, you know just what it is, you just do that, and it'll be fine. But if you find that if he isn't, then call. But he did not say that. He didn't say anything at all. And when we finally called, he just said, well, you know what to do. And after that, I never bothered calling him.
Didn't we call him when Michael was 6 and he had the bad one and he came and he told the Mifflin and Carolyn what to do?
He came that night,
I
because
think
I
he
remember
came,
him coming
yeah.
in.
And I think he told Carolyn what to do, and then Carolyn, kept his temperature down, and she took control.
Well, what they did is they put ice packs underneath
Yeah,
each
I
arm
remember
and then
that.
in the groin area. And that lowered the temperature.
And I stayed up with him all night then, because I was so afraid that something was going to happen. And then he came out of it, and he never had anything after that. Only that he'll always have that cough. If you ever hear Mike cough, you can almost tell that Mike must have.
And Al has that cough too.
Not as bad as mine.
Naturally not.
Yeah, Mike probably had some long-term damage
Right,
from all
yeah,
that, but
yeah.
it hasn't really affected him much. So what was Carlo like as a...
Carlo was a
infant?
very quiet baby. Carlo was a quiet child.
Making
I
up
can
for
remember.
it now, I guess.
Yeah, I can remember we saying that Carlo used to sit in front of the TV and he could recite all the nursery rhymes. The big thing when you kids were little was to put you in front of the TV where it gave you something to do, keep you out of our way when we were busy. We were not the parents that you kids are to your children, or had been to your children, unfortunately. But Carlo was always a very easygoing child. And being a third child, I think it's kind of surprising that he was. And he was the type, you wouldn't believe it now, that if he had books or anything, he'd pick them up, take them back, put them where they belong. I don't know when he changed.
He's making up for it now.
But he was always very, very easy. I can't remember that I was up a lot with him at night. You forget those things. You forget the trials and tribulations of when they're younger and the worry. I guess it's because the joy that we get from you kids now and your children that we forget that. Same way when you become pregnant and you realize what you've got to go through, you forget what you've gone through because you realize what a wonderful thing it is to bring a child into the world and to have a child.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So there was nothing special about his birth or any of that?
No.
Carol, you can recite the fact that you walk across the street. Al and Carlo, there's nothing exceptional there.
I can't remember anything with Carlo that was earth-shattering. Maybe we mellowed then and things became simpler.
What time was he born?
It was about 4 in the morning or something. I forgot.
Who was born in the afternoon? Michael was born or Tom was born? No, Tom was born in the afternoon.
Al was born in the evening.
Yeah.
I've got
we've got him down
on your pictures.
On your pictures.
Oh, you do?
Pictures.
Yeah.
Never on January